What's up, my dudes? Welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk about the wild cards that are getting reintroduced into Standard. And I've played with all of these cards when they were in the Standard meta game, so I have some idea of the power level of them back then. And I can talk about how I think they'll fare in today's sort of climate. First up, Druid, Astral Communion. Astral Communion was a card that was always trashed, a bit of a meme. The problem with it, it's not enough payoff on the top end. You can't dump as many legendaries. There's a few getting introduced right now, like Rag and Sylvanas, that are probably quite good to just be dropping in a top deck mode, but there's not enough card draw. Maybe just something like Octosari, potentially quite good if you're doing this sort of deck, but I think for the most part it's just going to be giga trash. You spend 4 mana on your turn doing nothing, discard your whole hand and just rely on top decks. It's super bad. Kuhn the Forgotten King, however, is a very good card. It was seeing play back in Jade Druid meta, and you're only getting basically one of the effects. Most of the times it would be for refreshing your mana crystals, so it would come down as essentially a 0 mana 7/7 when you got to 10 mana, which is a lot of tempo. But in Quest Druid, you get both effects because you got the quest up, so it's gain 10 armor and refresh your mana crystals, which is insanely powerful. And with Floop, you can do even more combos with it. With Elise as well, it starts getting out of control. If you've got a Floop and you've played Kuhn, and Floop copies the Kuhn, it's a 4 mana Kuhn. So you can essentially do something like a turn where you go Kuhn the Forgotten King for 10 mana, it refreshes you up to 10. You can Starfall something, and then you can play Floop with your remaining mana, and then you'll refresh up to 10 again, and you can do something like double away to Sergio, or you could do Cenarius or something like that, and it's an extremely powerful turn where you're gaining 20 armor while you're doing that as well. So expect Kuhn to be a powerhouse in Quest Druid. Whether or not Quest Druid can fare well in the meta, that remains to be seen, but I expect it will be. Paladin, Avenge, and Mysterious Challenger. If you remember back in the day, this got the nickname of Dr. Six, and Avenge was one of the secrets that really enabled Mysterious Challenger. It was in Standard for a while after Avenge had rotated, and while I thought it was still powerful, I still played with the card and it was still good. It really wasn't meta at that point, so the hit from Avenge going away, as well as some of the early game from Paladin, really hurt Secret Paladin when the rotation came. However, the card is very, very strong, and historically speaking, Avenge was Paladin's strongest secret by far, I would say. Very powerful secret. So I expect to see some form of Secret Paladin to re-emerge, whether that be a singleton deck with a lot of secrets and a Mysterious Challenger in it, as well as taking advantage of all the sort of Highlander stuff you see now. That could be a thing, or you could just want 2 Mysterious Challengers, and that might be worth running a 2-of deck. I'm excited to play with this combo. Secret Paladin was one of my favourite decks. Shaman got some nice tools as well. Evolve, super powerful card. For anything, it's like redundancy for a Mogu Flesh Shaper. You can do crazy turns where you go something like Thunderhead, Voltaic Burst, get a full board, Mogu Flesh Shaper trade, just take value trades where you can, and then evolve your entire board. Just change all your 1/1s into 2-drops and change your Mogu into an 8-drop, etc, etc. Super powerful stuff there. You can also combo it with Desert Hair, which I think will make the card. That is a very powerful tempo tool. Just Desert Hair plus Evolve. You get 3 4-drops at minimum, and it also evolves whatever else you have on board. So that's a lot of tempo in the early game, which I expect is going to be super powerful. Thing from Below, again, it was a very, very powerful card back in mid-range Shaman meta games. You had Totem Golem, which discounted it back then. You had Flame Tongue for 2 mana, which discounted it back then, and you had Tuskar Totemic, which also summoned a totem. So there was a bit more totem generators back then. You can maybe circumnavigate that. That's about go around the world. You can circumvent that, is what I meant to say. By playing things maybe like amalgams in your deck, because they will also reduce Thing from Below as well. Evil Totem again is in Standard, which is something you can run. But I don't think you want to be adding Flame Tongue Totem or Mana Tide Totem to the deck just to help Thing from Below. It could be potentially good in Token Shaman to run Thing from Below, because that is a deck that relies on swing turns. It's perfectly happy to just totem up, totem up, totem up every turn and allow your opponent to get onto board, because when you're running things like Sea Giant and Moby Flesh Shaper, it's almost a benefit that your opponent's ahead on board because you get those huge swing turns, and basically getting a reward for playing slow in that you totem every turn and thing from below gets nice and cheap is an added benefit. It really encourages you to just play passively and go for those swing turns, and getting maybe a 0 mana 5/5 on top of your other swing turns is going to be too much for some decks to handle. So Shaman got some good stuff, I think. For Hunter, Lock and Load, this card was never ever good, and I cannot imagine it being good now. There's not that many spells that you want to be playing, and even if you do, the actual effect itself isn't very powerful, even if you're chaining off it for a turn. It's too slow, and there's just no tempo involved really. Call of the Wild though is a strong card. Nerfed to 9 mana. I think on 9 mana it's still going to be good. You have Zul'jin now, which can replay it, so I think Call of the Wild will make the cut in Highlander style hunters. I don't think the power level is super high though, so it might be a case where Highlander Hunter now isn't the strongest of decks, I would say. And with all these new cards being introduced, it might be a case where Highlander Hunter kind of gets even worse just because everything else gets better. So it might be a case where Call of the Wild doesn't see play, but I think he would put it in Highlander Hunter for sure. Priest Vol'jin, Battlecry swap health with another minion. This card was pretty good, I would say, in sort of control-y tempo style pieces. I wouldn't say it was amazing. And in terms of combo priest now, this card I don't think would make the cut in it. It's a little bit too slow. The priest deck is really more of an aggro deck, and 5 mana for this kind of effect is not great. You kind of want to be using this on like mountain giants, that sort of thing, and then removing whatever it is afterwards. So I don't think it's the strongest of cards. It might see a little bit of play, but not too much. I'd say Lightbomb, on the other hand, is a powerful removal tool, really strong back in its day. I'd say in the current meta, it's not very good. You have a lot of Shamans, which run 0/2s, which Lightbomb sucks against. You have a lot of Priests, which run 2 14s or whatever, and Lightbomb doesn't really do anything against them. If you know your opponent's running Lightbomb, you can just not inner fire your guy until you kill them, and Lightbomb's just not going to be able to clear their board at all. So, powerful tool, but it's kind of meta dependent. It's really quite good against Druid, I would say. Lightbomb would be quite good. They have a lot of 5/5s, maybe Coon as well, maybe Scenario Spores, that sort of thing. Lightbomb's going to be great at removing that. But when it comes to like the main offender right now, which is Priest, and to a certain extent Shaman, Lightbomb's not going to be very good, I don't think. But with the introduction of N'Zoth, we could be seeing some sort of quest style control priest emerge, because in terms of late game value, N'Zoth is going to really help them. So Lightbomb might find a place there. For Warlock, Renounced Darkness, yeah, this card is giga trash and always has been. Pretty fun card, but I don't know why they're reintroducing it. There's plenty of similar meme star effects right now. Seems like a waste of a slot to me. Yeah, it's kind of a fun card. People might want to play with it, but it's not competitive at all. Imp Boss, however, is extremely strong card. Kind of really pushed Zoo towards the top of tier 1 when it was around. So I imagine it's still going to be quite good now. And you could see Zoo Warlock really benefit from this card. And that's going to be a deck that's going to be able to combat some of these later game legendary strategies that people might want to be running, because Zoo Warlock, you just kill them with it. So In-game boss, definitely a super good card, and it's going to help Zoo a ton. Mage got some pretty nice tools. Babbling Book was always an okay card. I wouldn't say it was amazing. You put it in your decks because it was a 1-drop that added a spell to your hand. You usually got quite a bit of tempo on one and a bit of value for your troubles as well. Might see some play in some decks, maybe not. Flamewaker, on the other hand, is an incredibly busted card. One of the strongest cards Hearthstone's ever seen, I would say. And in the current pool of cards, you have Magic Trick, you have Ray of Frost, you have Cyclone, you have Elemental Evocation. If you remember Cyclone Mage before, there was turns where they could just go Sorcerer's Apprentice and 7 spells or whatever, and then refill their hand with spells afterwards. Imagine they did that with a Flame Waker on the board as well. You could see a deck where you build up like Cyclone Mage did before, but instead of dropping a giant on turn 5 and 6 and having that as your reward is also potentially a Flame Waker and just killing the board and killing the other opponent's face in the process of doing all of that other stuff. So expect Flame Waker to be super powerful. I'm not sure whether you want to just go for a tempo style aggressive mage. It might not be too suited for that right now because you haven't got things like Explosive Runes, Arcanologist, or Mana Worm or anything like that. So in terms of getting early board, it might be a bit more tricky. But in terms of swing turns and Cyclone Mage, I think Flame Waker is going to be very, very powerful in that. For Rogue, Swashbuckler and Shaku. Swashbuckler was a very, very good card, I would say. Rogue loves 1-drops because they activate combos with SI and stuff. There's no patches with it right now, so it's not as strong as it used to be. But I expect that Rogues want to be playing this, especially when they're running Underbelly Fence and Vendetta. Having a very cheap way to get a class card is super powerful. I mean, some decks are even running Pilfer right now, which is essentially a crap version of Swashbuckler. So expect Swashbuckler to see a bunch of play in Rogue decks if they're a thing. Could play it in Highlander Rogue, which I've been playing recently, but it is a pirate, so it does mess with Captain Hook Dust a little bit. Shaku, again, it was an okay card. Pretty similar power level to Blink Fox, I imagine. It might see the cut as well. It's repetitive value, so the opponent is inclined to kill it, but you do suffer in terms of stats, but it does have that stealth as well. Probably will see a bit of play, but not the strongest of cards. For Warrior, they got Bloodhoof Brave and Varian Rin. Bloodhoof Brave is a pretty decent taunt. It saw some play in tempo style warrior decks where it's just a solid 4-drop to be able to play. And there's a bunch of tempo-ish style warrior decks right now, and those decks kind of benefit quite a bit from enrage effects. Being able to enrage this Bloodhoof Brave and then maybe copy it is very powerful, so I expect Bloodhoof Brave will see a bit of experimentation. Maybe it will just be a solid choice in aggro warrior if that's still a thing. Also, you can get it off Fright and Flunky, which is going to be nice. Varian Rin, back draw 3 cards, put any minions you drew directly into the battlefield. I don't think this card is very strong, if I'm honest. Back in the day, it wasn't that great anyway. Like, you can play this in maybe a control style warrior deck, but I don't think you really need to do that in the late game. They're perfectly happy just using Dr. Boom and the mechs and that sort of thing. Warrior already has access to the Boom Reaver right now, and Varian Rin kind of offers a similar effect, to be honest, in terms of tempo. So you might find this card's not actually too good. Potential for some kind of recruit style warrior, where you run Varian Rin, you run the Boom Reaver, you run whatever that 10 mana spell is that someone's 2 copies of a minion in your deck, and you run a bunch of big things. Potential for that, but probably not going to be too competitive. Now in the neutral slots, we got 5 neutral legendaries. We have Emperor Therissian, which is a super good card when it was out. Very good activator for combo decks, and it was good in things like mid-range Druid. It was just a good thing to drop on board. So I expect this card will see play in some sort of deck. I'm not sure exactly which one it will be. Some sort of combo deck for sure. Maybe OTK Paladin would want to run Emperor Therissian. Next you have Sylvanas, which was one of the first cards taken out of Standard because it was in every deck, and it even got nerfed from 5 mana to 6 at one point. Super powerful effect. I expect it will see play in a lot of decks. Definitely in Highlander decks for sure. They'll be wanting running this because they can't have as high card quality, and as off decks will run this as well. Curator, which draws Beast, Dragon and Murloc. There's not great options for dragons right now, I would say, from the Curator. But this card used to see a bit of play when Scalebane was a card, which was a 5 mana 5/5, which at the end of the turn buffed a minion's attack by 3, I think it was. And that card was pretty solid in a lot of decks, so the Curator still play alongside that. You could potentially run this card in sort of Highlander Paladin and have Warlock as Finley. You know, there's a ton of beasts they can already run, and then for like a dragon, you could maybe even go for a Nightmare Amalgam or something. So Curator might see some play in specifically Highlander decks, I would say, but outside of that, I don't think it will be too good right now, just because the things you want to draw aren't so amazing. Now, the big boy, Raglar Fire Lord. Everyone remembers this back in Classic being in the top end of pretty much every deck back then. I don't think it's super powerful that it's going to be in every deck. I think this card may see some play in Mage, because you can use Elemental Evocation to get out Ragnaros the Firelord, and it's definitely going to cause havoc when it comes to Mogu Flesh Shaper. If you get to evolve into a Ragnaros, then you're probably going to win those games. So I don't think it sees play in all the decks. Probably sees play in Highlander decks and maybe Mage, because they can use Elemental Evocation as well. N'Zoth the Corruptor is a super good card, which I think is going to spawn archetypes based off itself. Quest Priest right now, with Resurrect Quest Priest, isn't that bad of a deck, I would say. I'd say it's fine. But this kind of late game bomb that you can put into it is going to really help that deck, because Mass Resurrection, as okay as it is, you only summon 3 guys really, and they're not always taunts. So your opponent can either kill you even when you do that, it's a bit awkward to play, or they get enough trades, they're far ahead enough on board that Mass Resurrection isn't good enough to win you the game. N'Zoth, on the other hand, is definitely going to win you the game if you manage to get off on your death rattles. You have the 5 mana 2/6, which has death rattle, destroy a random enemy minion, which is going to be super powerful to resurrect. You have Kartut Defender, which is a 6 mana 3/4 reborn, which heals you as well. And the reborn effect of this means when a Kartut Defender dies and gets reborn, and then they kill the second half of it, they're going to count up 2 minions into your N'Zoth pool. So if you've only played one Kartut Defender that game, when you play N'Zoth, it's going to bring 2 back, and they're both going to have reborn. So it's going to be very easy to get your N'Zoth pool up to a high total. So expect N'Zoth and Kartut Defender to be very powerful late game finishing options for control decks, and I think Quest Priest is a great candidate for that, because they have good AoEs and they have inevitability, I'd say, through the quest. And that covers it, all the cards. Really standout ones for some classes. I'd say Hunter probably got it the worst out of everyone. All these cards are going to be available for the Master Tour Bucharest, so it's going to be a super interesting tournament, and it's going to really show off players' deck building, or at least players' friends' deck building, and that kind of leans in towards my strengths, I would say, as a player. So hopefully this sort of tournament is right up my alley, as it were. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed the video, and catch you in the next one.